welcome to Guru Grit. My name is Monika and this is a place for learning. So I often put out a call for questions and people ask me questions on the lives constantly. And the last time I opened for a Q&A, I got a really good question. It's actually very insightful. We talk and think so much about how we can see that we're compatible with another person in synastry, in astrology, what will make us get along, have a lasting relationship. And someone said, well, how do you know if you're incompatible with someone? And I thought that's so brilliant. So let's get into it. So incompatibility in astrology, and here's a wonderful picture I took of a garage door 5-6 years ago here in Toronto of this wonderful, Ace of Swords picture that someone did an excellent job on. And I thought it was very fitting because the Ace of Swords is a great force in both love and hatred. So let's begin. How do we see incompatibility in astrology? If you'd like to know more about me, you can find me on TikTok, write to me, read my articles on Medium, etc. Okay, let's begin. Planets that we're looking for: Saturn, North Node, South Node. Now this is a very simplified version. Compatibility is very, very intricate and detailed because you're taking the karma and the energy of two entities and trying to see if they will merge and for what purposes and for how long. So you can get a very compatible set of charts, but not blessed, let's say, or gifted in the realm of progeny or children. So they might not have a lot of children. You might get two people who get along, are very much in love, but will suffer financially. You might get two people who are very happy, but unstable. So you're looking for different things. And so what I want to just discuss very briefly is what makes people incompatible and generally will probably lead to a split. So this is all I'm after here. Very, very quick little presentation. I just put this together. Okay, Saturn is a limiting force. He's quite restrictive, he's quite cold, he's quite harsh, and he rules karma. So we generally do not want to see anything amplifying Saturn. Why would you want to increase negative karma and hard life experiences? Life is already unstable enough. The North Node is a corruptive force. The North Node amplifies things. So there's certain things you really don't want to see him touching. We don't want to see the North Node on Saturn. Why would we want more Saturn? For example, that's a very good example. And the South Node. The South Node is separative. Okay, the South Node separates, it's mystical, it's headless, it's got nothing to do with the material. So if we have the South Node touching some important places, then it will separate you from that person. Contacts, what the malefics touch in synastry. So exactly, what they touch really depends. You preferably would generally not like to see a malefic on the moon. It can be very cold. There's some exceptions to this. The North Node can amplify emotion or feeling from one person to the other. But if the moon is sitting with something else, it's not necessarily ideal. And South Node on the moon can go either way, give or take, but generally we need to be careful with the South Node. Though the South Node, I will say, can make a bond feel very faded. The nodes make things feel like they were meant to happen. It's very, very dreamy. And the reason is that they're not actual celestial bodies. And they have a lot to do with they remind me of like the wind. It's something you can't see, but you can feel its effects, something like that. So it's quite spiritual, and they have a lot to do with our souls. What your soul is drawn to, what your soul is pulled away from. So for example, if you gravitate too much towards your South Node, say you have a South Node in Sagittarius and you're very drawn to Sagittarian energy, it's because it's familiar to you. But that feeling fades, and once it wears off, you think, okay, well, what are we going to do now? I know everything about you that there is to know because I've mastered it in many lifetimes. This is boring. So it doesn't tend to last very long. Okay. Houses. What houses do we want? What houses do we not want? Okay, this is very important because different planets perform differently in different houses. Now, I haven't mentioned the sun because I don't think the sun is super important in synastry like most people do. There are exceptions to this if your sun is sitting with a lot of planets. Otherwise, I would say it's really where the sun falls. So I've pointed out the 6th house. This is the house of obligation, responsibility. So not a lot of fun things happen here. So generally speaking, if you posit someone's, say, the example I give a lot of the time, and it works quite well, here's the 6th house, is say you're a woman and you are interested in a man and you have Aries in the 1st house. This is your ascendant. Excellent work, Monika. I wonder why your work's not at the Louvre. So you're going to have a Virgo in the 6th. And say you're dating a Virgo man. Vom, I know, I'm just joking. So if his sun sits in your 6th house, it's going to light up. It's going to highlight the 6th house, which is responsibility, obligation, day-to-day tasks, mundane routine. So in terms of culture and society, that might agitate somebody because they're like, hey, I go to work, I work just as hard as you, but now because of the fact that you're in my life, I mean, you probably wouldn't even be aware of this unless you got a Synastry reading, you would say, you have given me more work to do on the day-to-day. So it increases responsibility. Doesn't mean that this man's a bad man, doesn't mean that he means to do it, okay? But I just see that culturally, this happens quite a lot, and societally this does happen. And when it happens, it tends to cultivate a sense of resentment, and then it tends to lead to a split. It's also the house of divorce and competition and our enemies. So, you know, you could end up bickering with someone and being quite aggressive towards them. So let's go to the 8th house. The 8th house is quite a dark place and it's quite taboo. And it has a lot to do with scandals. So if you light up each other's 8th houses, then, you know, scandal can make manifest and it can be quite just not very pleasing. It could be quite unpleasant to have someone's sun in another person's 8th house. There are exceptions to everything, mind you. So say you always wanted a domestic life, that's very different. If somebody's going to fund you to be a domestic partner, that's one thing. It's another thing if, like, you're like me, an 8th house person anyway, and you want to talk about spooky things and you want to meditate together and talk about your experiences and see if you can experience things together. It's a strong house that can help you bond in a very intangible sense. Okay, so very, very cool. Okay, so that's possible. I mean, if you're willing to learn astrology, then you're welcome in my 8th house. So it's like that. If you're willing to meditate with me and try things like that, then that's totally fine. Okay, 12th house is the house of loss. So here, a person can make you feel quite tired. Okay, so if their sun goes into your 8th house, it's going to zap your energy. It can zap your resources, your nerves, whatever. And, you know, exceptions to this that I've seen in happily married people is the house of foreign contact. So the 12th house has a lot to do with travel, having foreign friends, you know, people from other cultures. Maybe you marry a foreign partner as well. And this is very nice if you're going to move abroad together. Because if you're going to move abroad together, work for international corporations, then it's okay. Another thing, it's the house of prayer. It's the house of like ashrams and meditation, isolation, religious places, religious sites. So if you get two spiritual people together, you know, two people who grew up in a devout sect of some form of Christianity, and then they're very devoted to that path, and they want to live their lives on that path, raise their children on that path, then that would fulfill the 12th house. So, but generally speaking, we want to avoid 6, 8, and 12 because they are quite, they just take a lot out of us, to put it that way. All right. Now, what else do we have here? Am I allowed to click next? Ooh, here's some examples. Very important. You know, I like to bring it in with like this embarrassing kiddie style form of research, but here we go. Kid Rock, I didn't have a birth time. We really don't need one. We can do this very, very quickly. Here's Pamela Anderson's chart to the left, and his is here to my right. Okay, so first thing we're going to look for, very, very simply, I mentioned the nodes and Saturn. So let's have a peek at the nodes. So he's got his north node in Aquarius, which means he has a south node in Leo. And would you look, she has Venus and Jupiter in Leo. Now, I will say I have seen that the south node touching on Venus can bring in this sense of, oh, I'm familiar with you, you're my past life lover, and it's like so beautiful. But you need a lot of things to support that. Here, I don't like this so much because it's touching on two benefics, and because the south node separates, what happens is over time it makes you grow cold. So let's say that over time, Pamela Anderson stopped giving off Jupiterian and Venusian qualities. She was not affectionate, she was not laughing, she wasn't having fun. The abundance of love dried out, it went cold, so it pieced, it completely dipped. And I believe there was something else as well. Just bear with me one moment. Ah, here it is. His Saturn is in Taurus. Her North Node is in Taurus. That means the North Node amplifies. So it increased negative karma. It increased hardship, difficult conversations. Karma is like a reflector, and the greatest like mirror is your partner, but not always in a good way. You know how people love to take credit for their children's good characteristics, and for their negative characteristics, they say they get it from their other parent, or I don't even know how they turned out like that. It's like it's unfathomable to them that somebody could reflect something to you that you don't want to deal with. So Saturn can bring out these really difficult psychological things and make us, it's just a lot. It's quite hard, isn't it? So in any case, we do have those. Just a quick little example again. And we can check off all the boxes actually, because his sun is in Capricorn and her 8th house is Capricorn. So if we put his sun here, we're amplifying those intense moments. And so if you're not both going to be willing to unearth a lot of deep psychological things, the 8th house is a very psychological place. It's very hard. You know, you can do it. It can be done. Of course, anything can happen. I know people that have been married for over a decade or 2 or 3. I know couples have been married 40 years and their compatibility is like maybe 20%. It's not that great, but they're fine because they're willing to do it. Okay. So Angelina Jolie over here to the left, Brad Pitt to the right. Okay, again, let's begin. So we're looking for malefics. Okay, so Brad Pitt's sun, look at that, is in Angelina Jolie's 6th house. He's a sun in Sagittarius that goes into her house of obligation, responsibility. North node on the sun is alt. Actually, either node on the sun is not favorable. If you have something to help that along, like a really strong benefic, you know, then that would be fine. You know, if Jupiter was there to protect some of that, it will be okay. But what happens is the North Node amplifies. So the Sun person, their ego and sense of self or confidence can explode and kind of eclipse the other partner, or maybe they become a little bit arrogant or something like that. In any case, it's already sitting in a pretty harsh house. So that's just difficult to start with. Another thing, his North Node is amplifying her Saturn. It's also amplifying her Venus, which is very nice, very nice. So you could see how it could have immediately felt like, wow, you know, and they have opposing suns, which is great. But, you know, yeah, it happens to the best of us. It's all right. But then Saturn amplifies negative karma. So that's quite harsh on the whole. And, you know, there's a really good things with the synastry, very cool things going on, but ultimately, I suppose the North Node, the North Node won out. Another thing I want to mention is you could have decent synastry or not so decent synastry, but transits. If you see, let's say, North Node is transiting for this couple, amplifying one, not so much the other, and then negative things start to come out, and then it hits the second chart, that can lead to a split. And you could say the same thing with couples that don't have bad synastry. I mean, do have bad synastry. A transit happens that makes them feel lovey-dovey every so often, and they manage to hold their relationship together. I'm fighting the urge to sneeze, so excuse me. All right, I've got just Camila Cabello's chart here because I just Googled celebrity breakup and this came up. So Shawn Mendes' chart. This is very quick. It took me 2 seconds. Shawn Mendes has the South Node in Pisces. So as you could see, he made her love grow cold. Mercury is one of my favorite planets for synastry because Mercury is your friend. Okay, so you want to have a good indication of friend. So if you could put like Mercury in the 7th house. So if someone has Mercury in Pisces, you know, I have a 7th house Pisces, that person will be my friend. I love to laugh. I love to have a good time. I love to think, write, speak, and have mental intimacy. It's very important. Communication. Then, hey, that's very nice. So don't underestimate like a Mercury with Saturn is going to limit people. You'll see this in synastry. I think Trump has it with his daughter and his wife. His Saturn is on something for either of them. I mean, I think one is Moon, the other Mercury, and Venus or something. So they're literally limit their ability to express themselves. Like they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to talk around you, or they know that there's consequences to speaking and things like that. So I don't like that. So I don't like to see South Node or Saturn with Mercury, because if you don't have a good basis for simple communication or having a nice time, and because Mercury is quite playful but clever, if you can't solve problems together, then it's going to be very short-lived. It's not easy. Life, you have to get through life and have your best friend on your own side. Sun as well. Okay, a decrease in confidence, a decrease in one's shine, or even quite literally vitality. Your energy levels could go down if the South Node person is touching on the Sun. So I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you tend to see patterns if the nodes are involved on the Sun. And the South Node is on the Sun and Venus. Over time, it could take a while, but people generally do tend to separate. They do tend to separate because when they're done, uh, when they've sort of wringed every ounce of familiarity or every drop of joy from that sense of karmic familiarity, then there's not much else to do, because their bond wasn't built on something workable. It was built on sensation alone. And you need quite a few things. And not that it's not romantic. To me, it is romantic. It is romantic to choose someone and then to choose them over and over again. But in these cases, sometimes it can be so blinding because it's such a heady feeling. It's so romantic. It's kind of the feeling Neptune would give you. It's like a fog, and it's beautiful and mysterious, like a mermaid calling you just before you crash your ship. Now, the other thing we've also noticed is he has Saturn on her ascendant. Saturn on the ascendant really can go either way. I mean, it's up to the person. Can be quite heavy. It could limit their image, restrict them as an individual, because it's your self-image and it's your body. So maybe they restrict your movement, and you were a mobile person, but now that you're in love with this person, they don't travel for work and you do. You're not mobile. Like, I'm a mobile person. I have a mobile chart. That will never faze me. But say I ended up with somebody, dating somebody, and Lord knows I've tried, who like works the 9 to 5 in an office. It's just like makes your world small, so it's not for everyone. And another thing that you can see is it depends on the individual. It depends on their level of flexibility, because Saturn, the ascendant, can also, because Saturn is limiting, it can keep you there. So they can stay together for a long time. But I'm not sure about the happiness quotient in that sense. You'd have to measure it quite. So, it takes a lot of time crashing two charts together. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of things to look for. Always look to nakshatras. If you do that, it's probably the most important thing. It can tell you everything about compatibility. Will they have children, how they're going to work it out. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope it helped, and I hope you found it amusing and helpful. Thank you for asking questions. And there's me in the Temple of Venus in Versailles, just wishing us all well in our love lives. So thanks once again. Let me know if you have any other questions. I wish you all the best, and I love you all. Bye-bye.